Good afternoon and welcome to the City of Helena's Audit Committee meeting, January 10th, 2024. Madam Clerk, would you take the roll?
From the City of Helena, Commissioner Logan.
Here.
Commissioner Reed. Here. Director of Finance, Sheila Danielson. Here. And those representatives from, those representatives of Mardisla, if I'd have you introduce yourself, please, for the record.
Tim Morgus.
Jen Croft.
All right, thank you. So, first item on the agenda is updates from city staff.
So I just like to introduce Tim Morgus and Jen Kopp from our Mardisla, our auditing firm this year. We signed a 3-year contract for them to audit the city's, not only the city's financial statements, and but also the Tourism Business Improvement District and Business Improvement District. And so we're here just to have them present the overall process of the audit and the outcome of their audit. I shouldn't say findings because that's a bad word, but their conclusions. Thank you.
So I think you have a copy of the act for there. We issued a couple reports. What we tried to do is summarize in a PowerPoint the information instead of going through the 277 pages.
Yeah. And I do have the audit reports printed out separately in a printed packet too, but they're online as well.
So beyond the title page, just a little overview. Going to go through.
Apologies.
That's okay.
That's okay. Just because I said it would work, it's not going to.
It
Are
really
you
did,
able to click there?
really did work.
I think we're competing now.
So just tell you a little bit about our firm, and then we're going to go through the required communications under the auditing standards, and we'll go over some financial highlights. We'll explain a little bit about our audit testing, and then we'll talk a little bit more about audit results. So page 3, just a little bit about our firm. We're certainly new to the area. We were founded back in 1989 by John Moore and Dave Dissel, 2 individuals that were working as principals at Ernst & Young, wanted to break away and start a firm that was dedicated solely to providing service to local governments and nonprofit agencies. We have about 120 people or so. We don't do any tax work at all. We do less than 5, 10, 40 tax returns. So it's not what we do. It's not what we want to do. We focus mainly on governments and nonprofits. So we have 6 offices throughout Pennsylvania, approximately 85 audit professionals, 350 governmental clients, and we do an awful lot of single audits. Single audits are audits that are done in accordance. So if you spend more than $750,000, then you have to have a single audit. So that's ranked nationally. So we do about 170 single audits a year. We also do a lot with you prepare an ACFR, which is a comprehensive financial report that gets sent to the GFOA. Our firm has 8 independent reviewers who receive those reports from the GFOA and review them as independent reviewers. So we're very familiar with what you do and what your financial report is made up of. Under auditing standards, some required communications spelled out. There's a separate letter, but just to go through the high points, the audits done in accordance with generally accepted auditing standards, which are set forth by the AICPA, but also governmental auditing standards, also known as the Yellow Book, and uniform guidance, which is the federal requirements once you expend more than $750,000. So those are the standards that are outlined in your engagement letter. The significant accounting policies during the year, you had ones. So it was a pretty significant lift for the GASB to produce this. You had one SPITA that we capitalized, worked with you to capitalize, and that related to your Tyler Technologies.
Yeah, that's the Tyler Technologies citywide system implementation of our
So
software.
that's amortized over a period of time and shown as an asset and a liability. So a little bit different of accounting for that. Other than that, you didn't have any changes to your accounting policies. All financial statements have estimates. You certainly have estimates, collectability, receivables, depreciation over a useful life, those types of estimates. You also have pension estimates, NOPEB estimates, to the extent that an actuary calculates how much your retiree, how long your retirees will live and how much you'll need to fund. So those estimates aren't going to be exact, but we believe that they are close enough given all the circumstances. Sensitive disclosures. Throughout your footnotes, your disclosures are what we would consider clear, concise, and consistent. There aren't any sensitive disclosures that we would want to point out at this point. Corrected, uncorrected misstatements, which sort of brings up a conversation that we'll touch on throughout what we talk about here. So when we come in to do an audit, management provides us with financial information. And when we look at that financial information throughout the audit, we determine whether or not adjustments are needed to get your financial statements in accordance with what we call GAAP, generally accepted accounting principles. So ideally, we would have no adjustments in the process. In other words, your financial statements are consistent with GAAP. We identified some areas where you needed adjustments throughout the process, and from there, I think management calculated what those items were. So I think Sheila can talk about why that would be from our perspective, from her perspective, but from our perspective, I think staffing is a common theme that we've heard from her, and we've seen, like, you just don't have enough people to do the work that needs to be done. So you want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, it's just been myself and the controller pretty much for the last 3 to 4 years. I will say that we have had hired other folks to help, but they don't have or have not had the skill set to help. And the account position is vacant. It's been vacant. It was vacant for 6 months before that person came. Been very difficult to hire accountants with the city, and with the ongoing government accounting standards that the body continues to recommend and implement, becomes more and more difficult for small local governments like ourselves to really implement those standards. And the lease standard we implemented last year, same as the SPITA this year. It takes time to research those standards, how to present them in your financial statements, the accounting entries that go to them, and to be able to present them fairly on the financial statements. And this next coming year, I believe there's 2 more standards that we're going to have to implement. And so it just seems to be an ongoing process of more calculations that accounting staff have to have more and more expertise to present fairly on our financial statements. And so it can be a fairly significant resource drain to prepare these statements. So.
And a lot of work goes into that 277-page document. It had be consistent with what I would say too. The GASB board seems to publish a lot and has consistently done so. You have two new standards thanks to your compensated absences. Is one of them. Are you going to talk about them later?
No, I wasn't going to.
Yeah, they will not be as significant as the SPITAs, but again, consistent. There is a complete overhaul of the financial reporting model that's coming. That'll probably be 5 years out, but that'll be significant. So,
Yeah.
But it just, what we've seen across the country is challenges in finding staffing, competent staffing in the accounting world. So some of the things that we've seen out of the box things, we helped prepare the footnotes this year. I think we tried to give you a hand. We wanted to try to get it done. We agreed to get it done by the end of the year, and I think we worked pretty hard to get it done by the end of the year. So you're on.
With a lot of Jen's help. So we appreciate that. We did have to contract for extra services so that we could get the report completed on time this year. We're just running into staffing challenges in the department. And so we asked the firm to help us work on the footnotes so that we could get this filed on time this year. And I'm happy that we're here and we did get it on time this year. So it was a pretty big lift, and I appreciate all the help that.
Even that it was the first year or two is challenging,
Yeah.
but we've seen a lot of that in our practice. You may want to consider trying to have a local firm maybe come in and help you do the closing process if you can temporarily, because you still have your job to do, and then you have us sitting in here asking you questions all day long. And I think it's challenging to do your job and do this audit or whatever else you have coming up. So you might want to consider that between now and in July. We'll be here before you know it.
So do you have budget capacity for trying to address your staffing challenges? Or, I mean, do you have the budget for it? Or
Well,
is that part of the difficulty, or?
it's a budgeted position. It's just the difficulty in trying to hire somebody with qualifications to do the job. I have had the position open now since October again, and have received 3 applicants, but I'm surprised they applied, because they don't even meet the minimum standards that we asked for, requirements to fill the position. So I had to get back to them and say it just wasn't qualified. We had one person in the position for a little while, and she was too overwhelmed with it and left the organization because it was such a big lift for her to try to understand the concepts and to work to putting the accounting work that the city does do. She couldn't do it, and so she left the organization. So it's not that we don't have it budgeted, but I think I was speaking with Tim and Jen, and one of the other challenges is that the local firms don't necessarily have the staff either to keep up with government accounting standards, and so
Most of the local firms have exited this.
Yeah, and so they're getting away from auditing, which is why auditing local governments, which is why, we have more firms from out of state now applying to prepare audits for the organizations here or the municipal governments here in Montana. It's just because it's been it's difficult for them to keep up with the standards and train their staff, and most of the time the local firms also have taxes to do, so their focus is not primarily on auditing local governments such as Mayor Dussel, but they also have the tax season that they have to keep up with. They're facing the same staffing phenomenon that I don't,
And it's happened since the pandemic, whatever the
Yeah.
pandemic did to trigger it.
Yeah.
In 2020, our starting salary was $53,000 coming out of school. This year it's 70. And we had to make that market adjustment due to that's what all the other firms are doing. And there just aren't enough people to go around. And a lot of CPA firms want to focus on what they do good, what they do well at, and that, you know, that's some business. Your previous firm, Z&A, formed another firm, Pinion, and they do farm and ranch accounting, and they exited the governmental space. So just we've seen a lot of the industry. Somebody sent me an article yesterday, and I'll forward it on to you if you want. There are only 2 CPA firms in the state of Wyoming that are competent to do governmental audits. And as soon as I got that email, I deleted it because I didn't want to talk myself into something. So it's I'll send you the article.
okay,
And,
yeah, I appreciate it. It's challenging. I don't know why. I can't explain why. I always thought, you know, accounting was a great profession to go to, but
and it is, and I think that, you know, we were lucky enough. We've hired 23 people for this year, which we wanted 20 and we hired 23, so we're really happy.
yeah.
But we had to work at it. We've shifted people to do recruiting, and
So if anyone wants to come live in Montana and work for me, Jen. No.
Don't tell Kevin that, he might do it.
what about me?
She wants
Yeah,
to go with you.
Kevin is ready to move. He wants to come and start an office. So
I don't know what the ethics are there. So anyway,
yeah,
we're very appreciative of all the work that Jen did to help us get this in on time.
and I think that the first year we asked a lot of questions. I think you said multiple times. We've talked to people that have never been talked to by the auditors, and we asked some questions that have never been asked. So we did. You do from a local government standpoint. What we see, I see a lot of them. You have an awful lot going on. Like you have an awful lot of enterprise funds, your golf course, your restaurants, your solid waste, sanitary sewer, water. You do them all, and it is pretty impressive. You have an internal service fund, so I think that you also have too many funds. You have the way you account. You have internal funds that account for different types of transactions. We talked a little bit about trying to condense those funds, because when you condense them, you have less reconciliations to worry about. So I would encourage that you try to do that. You're looking at new software, you know, as a part of that transition. I think it's the right thing to do. You want to try to get lean and mean, streamline when you don't have staffing. So we had good cooperation from management and staff. I think we were met with a good attitude. I think Sheila got frustrated a couple of times about not having enough time to spend with us because she has her day-to-day job to do, and we appreciate her patience. So I think we talked a little bit on the next page, staffing shortage, audit prep, you know, just an idea that you might want to try to create a relationship, somebody to try to help on an ongoing basis. We can certainly help to the extent independence allows, but you just consider that year-end adjustments, the adjustments that we had this year, just use them as a cheat sheet for next year, make sure they get booked. So again, not a lot of adjustments, but I think a couple that you could be on top of for next year.
Janae, she's having trouble with the clicker.
Are you stuck? Sorry, and I'm sending emails and not paying attention.
That's okay.
It's not very exciting.
Sometimes it's just that simple. I have to have my.
Okay.
Jen's gonna do the financial. Any questions or comments?
I would just pop in real quick from a procedural standpoint. Commissioner Reed, I believe has to leave by 2:45. So any action item we need to take, we'll need to take before then. So
We should be done. We got 3 pages.
You use the term, compensated absences. Can you
So
briefly describe that?
at June 30th, your year end, you have accumulated vacation days, sick days, personal days, that would be paid out if an individual retired. So it was those were incurred during the year, those were earned during the year and accumulated. So therefore, they're recorded as a liability at the end of the year, at the amount that you would pay them out at. So if you have if you can carry over 1 sick day and you get paid $25 a day when you retire, then we would expect that a liability would be there for that $25. So pretty common in the industry, in the local government industry. So
Thank you.
Just a couple of financial highlights, and you can interrupt me if you have any questions. But there was a positive change in net position of about 13.9 million. So net position is the long-term view. That includes your long-term assets and liabilities. So that has your capital assets and that has your debt included in there. The change in fund balance for governmental funds was about 1.3 million and proprietary funds was 9.4 million. So the fund balance is more of the current view. It does not include any of your debt and it does not include your capital asset.
and it's closer to the way you budget and the way you operate.
And then, as Tim mentioned, you did adopt GASB 96 this year, which is the SPIDAs for that Tyler system. So you'll see about a $1 million liability on the balance sheet for that. The asset is recorded within capital assets. It's not yet being depreciated yet, just because it's not placed in service yet, but it will start being depreciated next year once it is placed in service. Just a little chart here showing your ending fund balance or fund equity as of 6/30 for the last couple of years, just so you can see that trend. Split it up by general fund and streets fund, which are your major governmental funds, and then your other governmental funds. And then we have your enterprise funds and your internal service funds. So there is a consistent increase there from 2021 through 2023. At the end of 2023, about 234 million. Audit testing and objectives regarding the single audit. So we do review the CFA for accuracy or the schedule of expenditures of federal awards. So if you do have over the $750,000 in federal expenditures, you are required to have that single audit. The major program this year was the Formula Grants for Rural Areas and Tribal Transit Program. So that's the transportation funding that's used for operations. And we perform tests of internal control over those federal awards, and we perform tests of compliance with regard to those federal expenditures. And then any issues, issue additional reports as required by the uniform guidance. So you'll see a couple of additional opinions in the back of the ACFR. Just a summary of those results. Regarding the financial statements, there's an unmodified opinion, which is the highest level of assurance that you can get. And then regarding the single audit, there's also an unmodified opinion on the major federal program, and we noted no questioned costs and no significant deficiencies or material weaknesses. So those would be what would be the findings. So there were no findings there. We did issue a management letter, but like I said, there were no findings. So these are just other matters which are less significant than findings, but just things we want to make you aware of that we noticed during the audit process. So I have them listed out here. I can go over some of them if you would like. I don't know how much detail you want about any of them. But for the most part, just related to some segregation of duties within different departments, there are a couple areas, the Civic Center being one, and then transportation being another, with the cash receipts. So one individual is responsible for collecting cash, preparing deposits, taking deposits to the bank, posting to the general ledger system. That's pretty normal to see in a smaller sized government or with those smaller offices, just because there isn't enough staff size, but that's just something to be cognizant about and know that there is kind of a segregation issue there. They do prepare monthly bank reconciliations, and there is someone reviewing monthly bank reconciliation, so there's kind of a mitigating control there. Regarding the municipal court fund, There was a software conversion in March of 2023. So there were a couple of reports that we weren't able to tie back and forth, just because some of the entries that were created in the old system were not created in the new system. They didn't pull over. So we had to do some reconciliations there, but just a suggestion that those should be reconciled going forward so that any difference is reconciled there. I think we had noted that that was already being taken care of, though. Parking pass sales, and this goes with the transportation office as well. There's no way to reconcile back the physical passes that are held to the passes that the system says is available or sold. So just recommending that there be processes put in place to be able to reconcile that. And journal entry review. This is both for TBID and just in general, those entries are reviewed prior to being posted, but then after they're posted, they're not reviewed again, just to make sure that they were posted accurately. So we just recommend those entries be posted after or reviewed after they're posted. And loan agreements. So there are a couple of loan agreements. We noted, I think there were 4 or 5. There is a statement in there that anything over 10% of those construction type loans.
And these are the sidewalk
Yes.
programs.
Yeah.
That she's speaking of, yeah.
Anything over 10%, the fluctuation within the cost, there doesn't need to be a new contract signed. There were a couple, like I said, 4 or 5 that the cost was over that 10%, but there were no new loan agreements signed. So there was some documentation about that that we could tie into, but just to stay consistent with the contract, there should be new agreements for that.
And I believe that we communicated to the Transportation Systems Department about the importance of, the follow-up of revised agreement. And so they'll be putting that in place. Yeah.
Can I ask a quick question? I think we moved over petty cash reconciliation. Just what is the average amount of petty cash? Is there consistency across the organization, or what are the amounts we're talking about?
It honestly depends on the department,
And like your golf course, I think it has $8,000.
and that's the most that it.
The reason they have so much out there is they have those gaming machines out there, and they have to be able to pay people out of that fund when people win on the gaming. And then they also have their tills, to operate. So they have a fairly sizable petty cash out there. Most others are between, I would say 200 to 500.
And do we have a petty cash policy organization-wide?
We do. Yeah.
Okay.
And this comment was just pretty general across the departments, but petty cash is being reconciled and counted, but it's being done by an individual who has access to the cash. So we just recommend that it be done by someone who does not have access to that cash on a monthly basis.
Never a good idea to have somebody checking that they're doing their job right,
Information technology. So there are a couple of comments related to this: data retention, disaster recovery, and user access levels. So you do have both a data retention policy and a disaster recovery policy, but it's not officially implemented. So with the data retention, I was speaking with IT earlier, and they wanted me to include it just because that policy wasn't always being followed. So they wanted me to include this here. And then disaster recovery, like I said, there is a policy, but it's not officially implemented. So just recommending that that officially be adopted and followed. And user access levels relates to folder access within the city. So how it works is they'll assign individuals access to different network folders, and that should periodically be reviewed. However, it's not being periodically reviewed, so just a recommendation that be reviewed more often. Related to TBID, I think this is the last one to hit on, bank reconciliation. So bank statements are being reconciled, and they're being reconciled by someone independent of all the disbursement and receipts processes, but they're not reviewing the statements and reconciliations from an original statement. They're getting a copy of the statement. So just the risk there is that anything could be altered on those copies. So we just recommend that the original statements be reviewed. Any other questions?
I have a question on these recommendations. So I'm assuming this is mostly sort of directed toward Director Danielson. How do these recommendations then get communicated to the appropriate staff?
So I'm in agreement with all of their recommendations that they need to be, they need to be considered, and we're waiting until this meeting. But I've already spoken to the municipal court about segregation of duties for really what was happening is, one person was taking cash, reconciling the bank statement, etc. So I've already implemented a change there at the municipal court. We're having a little bit of difficulty with the parking system. And so we need to work more with them on being able to make sure that their point of sale system is equaling their deposits that they're sending over to the finance department, and as well as making sure that journal entries are being reviewed after they're posted. That's something that we have to do internally in my office. It's been a little bit difficult because of staffing shortages, and we're trying to get things posted and get ready for the audit. But we will take more precaution in making sure that that's happening. In regards to the petty cash reconciliation, I've already implemented a change in finance. We have a petty cash amount in finance for $500 of how we've segregated those duties. We'll be talking a little bit more to the golf area, and then also in some of the other areas that have petty cash, to make sure that at least somebody else is signing off. And
does have some pretty good controls.
Yeah. In regards to TBID and BID, I can make recommendations, but I really don't have any authority to tell them what to do. But we could certainly share the recommendations with them, and they can implement suggested changes for amongst themselves.
So you're already underway.
Mhm.
You're already underway in
Yes,
suggesting changes to
yes,
various departments.
yes.
We did talk to TBID and bid separately as well, just to communicate these.
Yeah. So, and I'm not sure if John Dendy from the Business Improvement District is on. He did mention that he was going to attend, but I'm not sure if he's online or not. Is he? Okay. So anyway, they are aware of the recommended changes, and they can implement them through theirs. So, but they are just as component units of the city. They're part of this audit engagement.
John, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. And I just want you to know I'm here and I'm listening, and let's talk about it afterwards, Sheila, and we'll do what we need to do.
Great. Thank you, John.
Yep. Thanks, Sheila.
Oh, I'm stuck again.
Go.
Thank you.
Early conclusion of what we wanted to go over. Be happy to go over other items. I believe you submitted your act to be reviewed, but did you submit it?
Oh, we got it to the state, and we got it to the GFOA as well. The next step that we have to take is to file the single audit on the Federal Audit Clearinghouse, and then we have bond covenant reporting requirements too that'll get taken care of as well this month. So
Well, I think that says member communications, and I'm guessing that that's a little discussion here as to what we need to do as a committee, and then how we report back to the commission as a whole and the public in general. One quick question I do have for you all is, I'm assuming we'll take some action today, or would that be more?
I think you can, the action is just to accept the audit.
Okay.
Yeah.
So once we do that, that audit document would be available to the commission and the public.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, at that point we post it on our website. I typically notify like the library and a few other organizations that it's now available for viewing.
Again, when we file it with the single audit clearinghouse, it's a database of all audits throughout the country, so it's widely available to anyone at that point as well, so.
So would you have like a recommended motion?
I
Or
recommend that the committee move to approve the audit.
Except,
Pardon me?
I think would be better. You use the term
Accept,
accept
yes,
versus
accept.
approve. Because we issue our audit opinion and if you disagree with it, it's still our opinion. So accept is usually the terminology.
Thank you. Thank you.
so we entertain such a motion,
I would move to accept the audit as presented.
and I'll second that. Any any discussion here? Any public comment on the acceptance of Dissel's audit report?
Mr. Chair, I have no public comment on mine.
Okay. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? The motion carries 2-0. So it, I suppose at our next regular meeting, then we can give and it's not this Monday, but the following, we can give a summary of our acceptance of this document.
Yeah, you as the chair can, at the designated time for committee members can then, I'll help you craft a script to present it to the full commission.
Sounds good. So, anything else?
I don't think so.
Public comment. Is there any public comment?
Chair, I have no public comment on mine.
Okay, and then the last item prior to adjournment would be announcements. Anything that we haven't discussed that needs to be.
No announcements.
I'd like to thank you all very much for this. It's very encouraging and consistent with city's history. So, yeah, happy that we're
In finance department for all the
Yes.
work and thank you for
Yeah.
all of your work as well.
And thank you. Yes, and I know you have to go so closely, so.
well, I would say, given that nothing further to offer, we'll adjourn this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mhm.